Good evening from Washington. I'm Larry O'Connor. Something happened here in the nation's capital yesterday that was extraordinary, and I want to show it to you. It happened in a suburb, really, bordering the District of Columbia. It's called Montgomery County, Maryland. Montgomery County, Maryland, how to describe it? Think San Francisco without the trolley cars. Think West Los Angeles without the palm trees. This is the bluest of the blue, the liberal of the liberalist. It is left-wing, elite Washington, D.C. suburbs. And look what happened outside a Board of Education meeting when parents had finally had enough with the liberal school board. Watch.
What do we want? All girls. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? All girls. When do we want it? Now. All of the mothers, all of the fathers, all of the sisters and the brothers, your voices will not be silenced. Yes. Your voices will be heard. We'll never be defeated.
The parents united.
We'll never be defeated.
The parents united. We never be defeated.
Shame on you! We will not stand for injustice!
Accommodation for that conscientious objective, except only when the state has a very, very serious interest in enforcing.
This is our country. This is our country. These are our tax dollars. These are our tax dollars.
So what kind of issue can bring out 1,000 Marylanders, parents of every race, of every religion, of every gender? All 74 of them were represented there. What's the issue? Well, let's bring up one of the parents who were there. Bethany Mandel, she's the author of Stolen Youth, How Radicals Are Erasing Innocence and Indoctrinating a Generation. What a scene, and you were there, right?
Yeah. So what was really interesting about it, so 1,000 parents, for your listeners and they can't see me, I'm a white woman and I was in the minority. Mm-hmm. The vast majority of the folks there were Black and brown. And what was really fascinating, something I learned yesterday, was that it was a Muslim fast day. There were 1,000 people there at the beginning of the protest, I would say half of whom were Muslim, and they were there because they were fasting. I cannot imagine how many Muslim parents would have turned up had it not been a fast day in the end of June in Washington, D.C. And we had a torrential downpour right in the middle of the rally, and still about a quarter of the parents stuck around. Wow. And said, we're not going anywhere. And they watched the Board of Education members run out of the room and get into their black Suburbans parked outside because they locked the doors. They
Wow.
wouldn't let these folks in because it was a security risk, according to them. Can you imagine if the shoe were on the other foot and a Republican school board had closed a meeting to Muslim and Black parents
Right.
and said that they were a security risk?
Yeah. Of course, they'd be so racist. It sounds pretty Islamophobic to me. And the issue here, I think everybody should understand, is this school board, they have removed a parent's option to opt their child out of incredibly explicit sexual education. And that was the final straw. That brought out, and as you said, a huge Muslim group. It looked like Ethiopian Christian group
Christians,
there, Orthodox Christians. You're Jewish, but everybody holding hands and saying enough is enough.
Yeah, I was standing there with a Muslim dad and a white Christian grandfather, and they just said, literally all we're asking is for the ability to say, we don't want you to read a book to our second grader called Jacob's New Dress about a transgender second grader. We're not asking a lot here. We're not asking you to change the curriculum. We're not asking you to pull books out of the library. All we're asking for is the right over our own children and to be able to pull them out of the classroom and even know about what's going on in the classroom, because Montgomery County won't even send a letter home to say this is what your kid is learning. They won't even do them that courtesy.
They must have been shocked to see that kind of turnout. Honestly, I've been talking about it on my radio program the last couple of days. I knew there would be a turnout, not that big. Do you think that this will make a difference?
I think it will. The next one is scheduled about a month from now, and the last one had, I don't know, probably a tenth of this output. And so next time, when it's not a Muslim fast day, it's going to be interesting. And what's also infuriating about Montgomery County is that they do this in the middle of the day on a Tuesday to try to deter people from coming out. And yet, on a Muslim fast day in the middle of the day on a Tuesday, they had 1,000 people turn out. This is a sleeping giant that they will regret.
One of the images that I love there that just passed by is a young woman with a flag with a giant cross on it, and Jesus standing right next to a woman about her same age wearing a hijab. And you know, the left always talks about inclusion and always talks about diversity and equity. It seems like they've got what they wanted, because you're all out and together and sort of bonding over this one issue, and that's to push back against them.
Yeah, well, Montgomery County Council member Kristen Mink said that they were all aligning themselves with white supremacists and bigots, because their brains can't handle that they're not on the same side. And, you know, they better get used to it, because this is a crowd that is not going to go away silently. Again, middle of the day on a Tuesday.
I heard there were counter protesters, a small handful of them. How was their group as diverse as your group?
15, 20 people. And they didn't even really know what they were doing. They were sort of standing there like with rainbow umbrellas, like,
we're here because the teachers union told us to show up.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
So, listen, the left is very good, Bethany Mandel, at turning protest into political movement. What should Republicans be doing as they look at this?
They should turn out and walk among that crowd and chat with people. Montgomery County, to be honest with you, it's more or less a lost cause, and there isn't going to be an election here for a while. We missed that window, unfortunately. But it's time for Republicans to sort of walk around and chat with these folks and recognize that a sleeping giant has been awoken in the most liberal county in America, and this can be replicated around the country.
Yeah. Also, I mean, I'm curious. You know, I'm sure that you interacted and spoke with some of, especially the Muslim Americans who were there, who have been told for decades now that conservatives hate them, that conservatives are afraid of them, that conservatives want to marginalize them, and nothing could be further from the truth. Were they surprised to have such common cause with you?
They weren't surprised, but I think that they were a little bit, I mean, to be frank, reticent of being used as a pawn.
Sure.
And so there was a little bit of wariness on the part of some of the folks that I spoke with. And I think that we need to do the hard and slow job of relationship building and finding commonality. CARE was there representing those parents. So that's not an organization that most Republicans and most conservatives find a lot of common ground with. But I think it's time that we, you know, do that slow work of making those relationships between people of faith. And, you know, we differ on a lot of things, but there's some things like this parental rights issue where we're on the same page.
Yeah, and real fast, we've only got about a minute left here, but the issue is the most important thing here. When is the school board supposed to reevaluate this opt-out? I mean, opt-out is such a no-brainer. Every parent should have the right to opt out in a government-run school, and they're so arrogant, they thought they could get rid of it. What's the timeline?
Yeah. So, I mean, they're meeting again in July, and they think that they can just sort of steamroll this through. The fact that this has become national news, I think, is going to make it a lot more difficult for them. And hopefully, you know, hopefully they sort of backtrack and realize that even in Montgomery County, there are limits and there are lines.
All right. Well, clearly your husband isn't around to take care of that baby, so you better go do. You got to do everything in that house, Bethany. Go take care of your kid. We appreciate you joining us tonight, though.
Thanks, Larry.
That's Bethany Mandel. Her book is called Stolen Youth. Go get it. We'll be back in a moment. There's more to come on O'Connor tonight. We've spent quite a bit of time over the last couple of nights laying out the case against Merrick Garland, the Attorney General. It sure seems like, well, somebody's lying in this scenario. It's either the Attorney General or it could be the U.S. Attorney from Delaware, although they have the same story, so if one of them's lying, they both are. Or these whistleblowers. And now there's more. The New York Times uncovered another whistleblower yesterday, independently corroborated their account that the U.S. Attorney from Delaware, Mr. Weiss, said that he did not have decision-making power bringing charges against Hunter Biden. That directly contradicts what the Attorney General has promised under oath. So we're marching toward impeachment, it looks like. Let's get to Representative Ralph Norman. He's out of South Carolina, and he joins us now. Thank you for joining us, Congressman.
My pleasure. Thank you, Larry.
Do you think that the case is there to bring impeachment charges against Merrick Garland based on what you know, what we all know now?
You know, Larry, what's pretty apparent, the train's coming off the tracks with the Biden administration and what they are doing with weaponizing the Department of Justice. In the case of Merrick Garland, the overriding issue is why is he not eager to investigate this dating back in the Hunter Biden case to 2014? And they've had the 2017 and 18 charges about not paying the tax, but why is he not leading this? Now you've got David Weiss saying he didn't have the authority, and Merrick Garland said he did, and somebody is not telling the truth.
Right.
And the buck stops with Merrick Garland. And so, yes, I think the more we find out, the more we will see that when you have special FBI witnesses that come forward, when you have one of the assistant special agents in charge, Miss Holly, and Gary Shapley and others, that whistleblowers that claim that opposite what Merrick Garland is saying, that this decision to delay Hunter Biden was purely politics. Right. And the question is, can any other American, if your name wasn't Biden, get by with this? Maybe Clinton, maybe Obama, but can anybody else get by with this? And the answer is no.
Yeah. And I know that a lot of people are focusing on the contradictory statements that Merrick Garland appears to have made under oath in testifying to Congress. But what's important here is what those contradictory statements were about. They were about the potential obstruction of justice in investigating the president's son. That's as you said, that really is the overriding issue, is that we've got palpable crimes here. And it appears, if we're to believe this plea agreement that they floated last week, that Hunter Biden is going to walk away without ever seeing one day in jail for doing things that I wouldn't even dream of doing.
It's not even a slap on the wrist, Larry. The pretrial diversion that he entered, it's going to be expunged from his record.
Yeah.
On the gun charge alone, that carries a 10-year sentence. A known drug dealer carrying a gun. The taxes, unpaid taxes dating back to 2017 and 18. That carries sentences, and he's getting a slap on the wrist. And people know this. The fix is in for the American people. And again, Joe Biden his family is a crime syndicate. Look at the 20 LLCs that were set up.
Right,
money
the
was
shell
diverted.
corporations, yeah, to hide money.
Where's Merrick Garland asking where the money came from?
Well,
forget the fact that he didn't pay taxes.
That's the point. When you just said, this is when everyone says, oh, there's two tiers of justice, you're right. And it is so debilitating to the American people to think that our Justice Department has been so politically corrupted. That's where you can step in. That's where the House Republican majority can step in and say, no. There aren't two tiers of justice, and people like Merrick Garland, and yes, even the President of the United States, they have to pay a price here. So what do you think the timeline might be in terms of, at the very least, moving toward articles of impeachment for Merrick Garland? I know you don't want to get ahead of your skis there, but what's this look like?
Here's the encouraging thing that I would tell your viewers. One, under the Pelosi regime, where were the hearings? Again, this just didn't start yesterday. The Republicans have been in charge since January. Hearings are being held. Evidence is being presented. And I think as time goes on, the more evidence, and James Comer's done a good job, he and his committee, Jim Jordan's done a great job. It's going to present a case that's going to look pretty dim for the Biden administration. Mm-hmm. And not only is the impeachment for Biden, but it goes on down the line with Merrick Garland. The other good news is, isn't it great that he's not on the Supreme Court? Somebody that's as compromised as Merrick Garland.
Honestly, as many disagreements I might have with Mitch McConnell's governing style in the Senate, we got to raise a statue to this man for holding firm on that during the last year of the Obama administration and not allowing a hearing on Merrick Garland for the Supreme Court. That would have been a disaster.
Well, we got to have consequences, too. We can't just present the evidence and no consequences. That's what the American people are tired of, and I think it will be. It may have to take another administration, but the wheels of justice turn slow when it concerns the Bidens. They've been stonewalling for so long, and there's absolutely no excuse. And the proof is in of what they've done with the slap on, I wouldn't even say a slap on the wrist to Hunter Biden, is a complete joke.
It's a full body massage is what it is. All right, so let's talk about President Biden for a moment. Because he doesn't talk to the media, he doesn't talk to the press, he doesn't give press conferences. I think it's been almost a year since his actual last formal press conference. So reporters have to shout questions at him. Now, in the last 2 weeks, we have learned that the FBI had an informant that said that they had offered $10 million of bribes to the Biden family in exchange for national security policy decisions during the Obama administration benefiting this company in Ukraine. We've learned about these text messages that Hunter Biden sent out claiming that his father was sitting right next to him. Watch what happened earlier today at the White House when a reporter asked about it.
Your son's Chinese shakedown text message. Were you sitting there? Were you involved?
No, I wasn't. And I don't.
Were you?
No.
Wow. He seems kind of angry there, screaming at a reporter. Does that sound like somebody who's, doesn't have anything to hide?
Well, he's gotten by with this ever since really he's been in office, claiming, he stands by his son did nothing wrong. Well, evidence proves otherwise, Mr. President. And the sad part, you would think he could play a rope-a-dope and just sound ignorant and not knowing anything, but he's been like that for so long. But now he's just incoherent. I guess he's just going to say no, 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 but it's not going to work now.
Yeah.
We got people that are skilled at what they do. They're looking into it. And the tapes, look at the SARS, the suspicious activity reports that the Treasury issued. That's not a laughable matter. It's been ignored. And so the evidence is mounting. The wheels of justice are coming off with the Biden administration.
You've seen how things work in Washington, D.C., and as this scandal continues to grow, and it's grown exponentially in the last 24 hours with all three networks covering it now, and as I mentioned, the New York Times corroborating much of what the whistleblowers have told us, they're going to try to play rope-a-dope. They're going to try to play defense and drag this out. The next move will be Merrick Garland saying, all right, this has risen to the level of special counsel. Do you think that's the right move to make? Does the special counsel need to step in? Because the way I look at it, that means the clock starts all over again on this.
Nothing surprises me on what they do to delay, but I will tell you this, when you see the major news networks carrying something they should have advertised and had on their program years ago, one of two things. Either they're scared to death of what a candidate, Joe Biden, would look like when he opposes any of the Republican nominees. They're scared to death of that. He cannot stay in his basement during this next presidential cycle. But now the next question, how do you get him out and how do you get him to be coherent? You don't. So that's going to be an interesting $64 question.
That is a sad state of affairs. You're talking about the President of the United States. Congressman Norman, we only have a minute left. I'd love to ask you about presidential politics because here we are, it's the end of June. Final 6 months of this year are going to be hot and heavy for the Republican nomination. And former President Trump's now making some indication that he might not participate in the first debate scheduled in August. Do you think that's a good idea?
I never doubt. President Trump has used, debates to his advantage. He's great at it, but he ought to let the other candidates get in. I think if you talk to David Bossie, they're looking at those who have a certain percentage in the polls. But this first debate, I think, is important to showcase everybody. And I would hope that a number of candidates will be able to appear and make the case to the American people. We've got the most important election coming up. We cannot stand another 4 years of this corrupt administration that the Bidens have had. So hopefully he will, but he's leading in the polls. We'll see how it works out. All
right, Congressman Ralph Norman, appreciate it. You have a great 4th of July weekend down in South Carolina. That's a great place to be to celebrate our independence.
Thank you so much.
There's more to come on O'Connor tonight. Keep it here. You're watching the Salem News Channel. Perhaps you saw the screaming headlines over the last 48 hours. The walls are finally closing in on Donald Trump. That's it. They got him. There's a smoking gun audio tape regarding the classified documents case. It's going to throw him in jail, Gitmo, for 100 years. Here's a little bit of the audio that's supposed to be the smoking gun. Here, watch.
Military given to me. I think we can probably get it.
I don't know. We'll have to see. Yeah, we'll have to try to
declassify.
Figure out
See, as president, I could have declassified it. Now I can't, but this is classified.
Now we have a problem.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
It's so cool. I mean, it's so. We heard I have. Believe me. But
so here he is talking about the document. I didn't classify it. I could have classified it. Blah blah blah. And the document supposedly is General Milley's war plan for invading Iran. So that's a big deal, right? Really Huge. Yeah, that's it. Wall's closing in. Trump's done. Except for this. CBS News reporting last night. The Iran memo that was in question, it's actually not one of the 31 records that Trump is charged with in that federal indictment about having unauthorized classified documents. I don't know, maybe it's me, but if you've got a smoking gun audio of Trump admitting that he has a classified document and he's holding up the document on tape, and then it turns out that whatever he was holding up is not actually one of the documents in the indictment, then maybe it's not the smoking gun everybody thinks it is. Joining us right now is Michael Caputo, former Assistant Secretary of Health and Human Services under President Trump, and also the founder of Americano Media. Michael, I mean, where have we seen this story before? It's like they keep doing it. They keep doing it.
It's not just not a smoking gun. It's not even a gun. This is just theater, really, more than anything else. And the Department of Justice is clearly breaking the law to achieve this public relations disaster they've just made for themselves. Yet they're allowed to do this. As we all know, the Department of Justice is permitted to leak all kinds of classified and case-relevant material to the public because they did that through all of the different bogus investigations into Donald Trump, from the Russia investigations and onward. Yeah. You know, this actually, as we find out, the staffer whose voice you hear in this audio also told the DOJ she does not recall anyone being shown any documents as he was saying these things.
Right.
This is really ridiculous. It's just another PR ploy. It shows you they have nothing, Larry. That's what I'm taking away from this. Right. Because if they had something, they'd have leaked it. They'll leak anything.
Well, and also, Michael, I've heard some people saying, well, at least this proves that Trump is admitting that he didn't declassify all of his documents. And my immediate response is, wait a minute, he's talking to writers. He's BSing them. I mean, it's against the law to BS a reporter, then we're all going to jail.
It's true. You know, these are the same people who thought when Donald Trump said, hey, Russia, if you've got Hillary Clinton's emails, send them on over our way.
Right.
They have no sense of humor. There's only thing worse than a humorless liberal, Larry, and that's a liberal who thinks they're funny.
Michael, I got to say, though, when you actually listen to this audio and you look at what the president is saying and what the underlying message is, I got to say, for those who are concerned about the operations of the Pentagon, for those who think that we've had enough with a lot of these foreign adventures and a lot of the use of our military in campaigns that are either no-win situations or 20-year stalemates in Afghanistan, honestly, I think this actually helps the president make that case. It shows that when the cameras aren't rolling and he doesn't think he's being recorded, he continues to maintain that message that we're going on these wars and they're trying to invade countries and we have no business doing it.
It's true. And I think that this also reveals that these folks don't play 3D chess. They don't even really play checkers. Their game is very weak. If they're laying out this recording that has nothing to do with the case and undermines what all the Department of Defense war hawks have been saying for so long, that, we need to be in these wars, it only comes down to one thing, Larry. They leaked this because of the timing in the news cycle. Yeah. What happened that day, right? We found out more from the IRS whistleblowers about the bogus investigation into Hunter Biden and Joe Biden's own corruption. They released it because they wanted to suck up the news cycle. That's exactly what happened. The PR people are running the Department of Justice, not the law enforcement.
Yeah, so Michael, it's interesting because you're right. We've been focusing quite a bit on the corruption that's being exposed on a daily basis here in the Biden family. It's something that those of us who looked at the laptop story back in 2020, we saw pretty clearly. Finally, it's all coming out because we have a Republican majority in the House. When you look at this story, you're an old political hand. If you were trying to advise Joe Biden at this point, based on where his polls are, where this story is going, and also based on his political capabilities, is there any cleanup that you could do here? I mean, this seems like this is a slow train wreck that we're all watching.
I also believe that train wreck is well orchestrated. We all know he's too old to serve as president of the United States. We all know that he's too corrupt to serve as the president of the United States. And this, little by little, is coming out. We see the White House press room turning on the KJP the other day and running off the other spokesman who refused to answer any questions about this scandal. The fact of the matter is, I've been in politics for 40 years. I've done many different U.S. Presidential primaries. I don't think the candidate is Joe Biden. I heard Tucker Carlson say he thinks it's Governor Newsom. I think it's Michelle Obama. Because if you look at the polls, there's only one Democrat that beats everyone. Newsom has a problem beating Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis or another candidate. Michelle Obama could defeat U.S. Senator Jesus H. Christ if she ran. Her numbers are impenetrable. So for what I see here is the slow takedown of Joe Biden. So after the primaries are over, the Democrat convention can anoint their candidate. Remember, the Democrats are able to do that because they have what they call superdelegates at the convention. At the Republican convention, it's a lot harder to overwhelm the will of the primary states.
Well, you're going to get a lot of people talking with that statement, Michael Caputo. So I'll let it marinate there for a while. Let's talk about the candidate that you're supporting, Donald Trump. He's bringing this up at rallies and at political events. A lot of observers, though, are saying, listen, the Biden story is telling itself. Lay it out there. Do what Trump does best. But don't make it about you. Don't, there tends to be a habit of President Trump where you got a great story here that makes your opponent look bad, but then he turns himself into the victim on it. You know what I mean? Is there any discussion about sort of the way to approach this story so it isn't all about him?
Well, I've known Donald Trump since 1988, and I've never seen it go any other way. The fact of the matter is, Donald Trump is the victim in this regard. In fact, we're all the victims, but the deep state is after us via Donald Trump. And I think, it's great to say, oh, it's really about the country. Please just make it about the country. Donald Trump has memories, very, very bad memories of these people coming after him for 7 years. A lot of us who are in the Trump camp, the immutable base of Donald Trump in the Republican primary vote, for example, the 35+% that are always going to go his way, no matter what happens, it enlivens the base for him to remind them of all the dastardly deeds this deep state has pulled against him. Yeah. Remember, Larry, when Donald Trump first started talking about the deep state in 2016, a lot of people were laughing. Heck, Roger Stone's been telling me about the deep state since I was his driver in 1986. I used to laugh aloud. Now I know the deep state exists because I caught them outside my house many times. The deep state took photos of me praying in my Catholic parish prayer garden. These guys are there. They're real. They've abused Donald Trump. He's the best witness to their crimes. I say keep going, Mr. President.
Can we collaborate on the Netflix miniseries focusing on your life as Roger Stone's driver? That's like a 12-episode run right there. I could sell it.
I'll tell you, it was a great education in politics, but in the end, knowing Roger Stone, knowing Donald Trump, ruined all of us. I mean, I told the great Rush Limbaugh once, this is about telling people, teaching people, you must not get involved in politics to do anything right, because you'll be destroyed by the deep state. Rush was right. This is about teaching the next billionaire he better not step out of line and do exactly what the deep state tells him.
Michael Caputo, I hope you have a great Independence Day week next week and through the weekend. I know you will, because you love this country, you love your independence, and that's what it's all about. Thanks for joining us tonight, sir.
Thank you.
There's more to come on O'Connor tonight. Oh, you bet there is. Keep it here. It's Salem News Channel. Well, June is winding down, and that means it's the end of Pride Month. Or is it? We've been told that it's going to be a summer of pride. I mean, really, why not just have it be year-round? It's the year of pride, right? I mean, how about the decade of pride? How about I shouldn't give them any ideas. There is one indelible image, though, that sticks with so many people when we reflect on Pride Month of 2023. It's this one from the White House. Yeah, the really unfortunate-looking transgender gay pride flag literally taking center stage with the American flag flanked to the left and the right, subordinated by the transgender flag there at the White House when Joe Biden was hosting his Pride event. That was before, of course, people started baring their breasts and running around on the South Lawn. That image left an impression on our next guest, executive editor at The Federalist, Joy Pullman. And Joy, I really appreciated your article about this, where you referred to the pride flag as the flag of American occupation. That's a provocative take. Explain it, please.
Well, that's really what it felt like for me walking down my streets. You know, I go walking with my husband and our dog very regularly. And I noticed that I was seeing many more pride flags than American flags. Basically, it felt like being in an occupied country. And that kind of, just jogged my thoughts to kind of think about that. And I think that symbolism is actually extremely accurate. And because we understand that the pride flag is really not merely a symbol of sexual license, it is also a symbol for using identity politics to erase the original U.S. Constitution.
Yeah.
That is the goal of the Pride agenda.
So, I mean, the founding principle of America was e pluribus unum, right? Out of many, one. We are together, we're unified, and we unified under that flag. And I guess what you're saying is when the American flag is subordinated, as it has been, to this other flag that is really just sort of represents a specific identity in this country, and let's face it, the political agenda that goes along with that identity, that it basically projects the exact opposite message. We're not out of many, one. There's you guys over there, and then us, and we're going to dictate the terms going forward.
Right. So the United States has been undergoing a 100-year, perhaps longer process of slow regime change. And we have been shifting from natural rights that our government secures equally for all people to this division of people into these sliced and diced identity groups that are afforded special privileges and for which they must petition and influence and push around the government. So it completely inverts the traditional American understanding of every single citizen as having completely equal, full natural rights accorded to them, of course, by the Creator, and instead says your rights are subject to whether the government has decided that you're part of a group that gets rights. And to be honest, right, the granting of specific government privileges now is accorded to basically the people who are going to vote for the party of more government and more government control. So again, it's a complete inversion. It is really a regime change from limited government, from Republican small r, self-government, from complete equality before the law for all Americans under the equal application of the law, to some people are more equal than others. Some people get more privileges than others based on whatever identity groups the government has decided to recognize.
So LGBTQ activists will say, listen, in the history of this country, we had been marginalized, we had been bullied, we had been beaten up, we didn't have any rights or any voice. And pride represents our ability to actually step out of the shadows and say, no, well, this is who we are, and we're not going to be ashamed of it, and we're certainly not going to be bullied anymore. Are you saying that the pendulum has swung too far in this case? I mean, you're not a proponent of any kind of discrimination, I'm sure.
I think that really just sets up the thing in a complete opposite and discriminatory sort of way, even that question, right? Because it basically puts me in the position of saying, of course I don't support beating, right? It should be assumed, right, on good faith that obviously I don't want any of my fellow Americans to be mistreated or the subject of crimes, right? And so nobody is supporting that. What we are talking about is how, again, the classic American understanding of equality under the law protects every single person, no matter what they do in their bedrooms. And what I think really, LGBT people are being used for an agenda, and so and that actually subverts all their natural rights as well, right? So very, very many, for example, if LGBT people do not support all the things that are being done in their name that include the erasure of essentially all the protections of the Bill of Rights in the name of pro-LGBT things. It's not pro-gay to not allow gay people to have the natural right to defend themselves, for example, with a lawful firearm. It's not pro-gay to take away the freedom of speech and the freedom of association that are enshrined in the First Amendment. It's not pro-gay to take away, the Fourth Amendment's protections for search and seizure, right? And so, well, again, it's not pro-gay way actually ultimately, to go ahead and slice and dice our American polity into special rights that are given at the purview of government to only specific groups at the mercy of that big Leviathan government.
Yeah.
What is pro everybody is having all of us have the exact same natural rights, such as those that are enshrined in the Bill of Rights, given to every single person, no matter what they do at home and private.
Yeah, also, of course, the most prominent agenda item for the activists this year, certainly, that we've seen, has to do with so-called gender-affirming care. And there's something incredibly manipulative in the way that they're advocating for that. Here's Rachel Levine, who works in the Biden administration, characterizing gender-affirming care. Watch this.
It's such an important issue for our youth and adults. As you said, some of these laws are actually extending into adulthood. We often say that gender-affirming care is health care. Gender-affirming care is mental health care, and gender-affirming care is literally suicide prevention care. Would that be your view as well?
I 100% agree.
Joy Pullman, this is a message that preys on terrified parents who are coaxed into moving down this dangerous path for their children lest their kid kill themselves.
I mean, I actually think that is not surprising. Again, coming from the same people who want to take away equal rights from gay and all people in the name of helping LGBT people, this is just another example of of using a sympathetic minority to take away rights from not only that minority, but every single other person. In this case, we have, of course, the right of a child to be protected by his or her natural parents, and for the presumption of the parents to be older and wiser and caring about the best interests of their child more than any other entity is ever going to do. And all of that, as well as many other, again, just basic fundamental natural human rights that are historically, that our government has existed to secure in America, are being erased under the regime of identity politics that is using gay, transgender, and other people, including these sad children who obviously need love and care and appropriate treatment, not to have their bodies severed apart, but they're being used and manipulated for, again, a political agenda whose ultimate goal is regime change in the United States.
Yeah, listen, I think it's a very provocative message that you've laid out, and you lay it out in a very clear and concise way with a whole lot of facts backing it up, and it's a voice that needs to be heard more. Joy Pullman, it's great talking with you. Don't be a stranger. I'd love to have another conversation.
Oh, great. Thanks for having me.
Executive editor over there at The Federalist, one of our faves. There's more to come. Keep it here on O'Connor Tonight. This is the Salem News Channel. A lot of people think Joe Biden's corrupt. A lot of them think he's decrepit and incapable of being president. A lot of people think he's just a mean old jerk. I don't know. I mean, I think he's all three. I don't have to prove to you what a mean jerk he is. Look at his 50-year career in Washington, D.C. Look at how he's treated people. Ask the family of Robert Bork what a nice guy good old Uncle Joe is, or maybe Clarence Thomas. I'm sure he has an opinion or two about it. What about the millions and millions and millions of Americans who dared to vote for Donald Trump in the last election? He thinks they're all fascists and un-American, and well, you get the picture. Earlier today, though, he turned on his base, his core constituency, the people he can always count on to deliver a vote, the media. Yeah, White House reporters are getting frustrated with the fact that they don't get a press conference. They're not able to ask the guy questions unless they're shouting it from across the room and hurried out of the Oval Office. So today, as he was leaving the White House again for another long weekend trip, he was asked specifically about this text message that we've seen, you know, where his crack-addled, corrupt son, Hunter Biden, was sitting on a sofa, possibly naked and smoking crack, we don't know. And he was asking his Chinese handlers to send $1 million to him in a wire transfer because, you know, that's what sons of presidents do all the time. I'm sure John Quincy Adams did that when his dad was president. Anyway, according to that text message, Joe Biden was sitting right next to him when the shakedown occurred. So watch how Joe reacted when a reporter understandably asked if that was true.
President Biden, how involved were you in your son's Chinese shakedown text message? Were you sitting there? Were you involved?
No, I wasn't, and I don't know.
Were you?
No.
Wow, chill out on the white rage there, Gramps. My God, did you have a grandpa like this? You usually had a nice grandpa and a mean grandpa, right? And the mean grandpa would like sit screaming at you if you accidentally unlocked the screen door in the middle of the summer in Holland, Michigan, when everyone was out at the barbecue. But I'm speaking too personally now. That's what happened to me when I was 7 years old. I'm still traumatized over it. But that actually was not the most outrageous and obnoxious and disconcerting moment of this exchange with reporters. No, this should really concern you.
It's hard to tell, but he's clearly losing the war in Iraq. He's losing the war at home. And he has become a bit of a fly around the world. It's not just NATO. It's not just the European Union.
Putin is clearly losing the war in Iraq. Now listen, we all make a mistake now and again. We have a slip of the tongue. We say one word when we're thinking another. I do it all the time, but we usually catch ourselves and correct it, right? He just went flying right on by, and it's also not the first time he's done it. In fact, it's not the first time he's done it in just 12 hours. A reporter for Bloomberg News was reporting on his fundraiser that he had last night, and at the fundraiser, he said that he referred to Ukraine as Iraq. By the way, I like this. He also referred to his new best friend, the Prime Minister of China. Apparently, he meant the Prime Minister of India, but let's face it, the Prime Minister of China is certainly pretty happy with how Joe Biden's been treating him. After all, you get what you pay for. Here's what's really fun about the whole thing, though. Remember when George W. Bush was the stupidest man alive? He was brain-addled. He was drunk half the time. He was a moron. He was the worst president in history. He couldn't even speak in complete sentences. Remember how he was destroyed and lampooned on Saturday Night Live and every late-night comedy show, and how very serious columnists at the New York Times told you that George W. Bush isn't all there? Well, just a couple of months ago, George W. Bush said this.
In contrast, Russian elections are rigged. Political opponents are imprisoned or otherwise eliminated from participating in the electoral process. The result is an absence of checks and balances in Russia and the decision of one man to launch a wholly unjustified and brutal invasion of of Ukraine. Iraq. Anyway.
There you go. The stupidest, most brain-addled and incompetent president in the history of the United States just mistook Iraq for Ukraine. And Joe Biden just did it too. In fact, Joe Biden just did it last night, and he did it today on camera. Now, if George W. Bush was incompetent and addled and stupid and moronic and incapable of being president, and he just did that, then what does it say about Joe Biden? Well, if you watch network news, they'll say nothing about Joe Biden because he's their guy. That's it for tonight. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, I'll see you on the radio.